So this is a new video about doing basic editing in Adobe Lightroom as of September 2023. So they have an early access thing that just popped up on my phone. So let's kind of go through it together. They've changed the layout a little bit. So let's try and figure this out. So when you have an image in Lightroom, there's a couple different things, like basic things that you can do with it. You know, you might want to use the crop tool, and that allows you to change, like if I only wanted the goose or duck or whatever that is, or if I wanted to make it more square. I have some options at the bottom. I can choose the aspect ratio that I want, and I can straighten it, and I can rotate it and flip it and all those kinds of things. But the two main things that we are going to be talking about in this video are under Edit. So they used to just be down at the bottom, and now they're under Edit. So we are going to talk about light, and we are going to talk about color. So under light, we have a bunch of different options. And so with exposure, we're talking about the overall lightness and darkness of the image. So if you slide that slider, you can get it to where you want it to be. I'm actually going to bring it down just slightly. Contrast is the difference between your lightest and darkest areas. So if I bring the contrast up, my light areas get lighter and my dark areas get darker. If I bring it down, then my light areas become more middle toned and my dark areas become more middle toned, and it becomes more kind of like overall grayish. So again, this is more contrasty and this has less contrast. I also have my highlights. So that's going to be some of the lighter areas. So I can affect just those light areas. So if you notice, like on the, I guess I'm going to call it a goose. So on that goose, is it a duck? I don't know. On that goose, you can see I'm sliding it down and it's just taking the light areas and putting in more information there, or it's brightening them up. And I may lose a little bit of information there in my highlights. So I think I want them a little bit up for a little bit of pop. Same with my shadows. Those are the darker areas. So I can bring my shadows up. So anything that was dark becomes lighter, or I could bring my shadows down. And if you notice, those kind of light areas, like in the goose, aren't being affected that much. They're being affected a little because there are some dark areas there. But mostly, like if you look at the tire of the truck, here with it slid all the way up, it's a lot lighter. Here, it would be a lot darker. So I might want to darken it a little bit, but not where I lose too much information on the tire. And then I have my white and my black areas. That's the more extreme ends of that histogram, the kind of chart of how, like what kind of values you have, lightness and darkness. So this will just affect the most white area. So again, if I want to bring that up a little, I can. If I do it too much, the white areas becomes too light. If I do down, sorry about that. If I go down, then it will affect just those areas. And then same with black. It's affecting just at the edge, like making the most dark areas darker or the most dark areas lighter. So that's how you use light. To use color, there's a bunch of really cool things. First of all, whenever you take pictures, you know, all light has a different temperature. There's more yellowy light, there's more bluish light. If it's too blue, if you took the picture in shade, you might want to warm it up so it looks like it was taken in during a, you know, nice warm summer day, or maybe you want it to look more like a horror movie or something, and you want to bring in some more blue. So usually if the image is too blue, you add in yellow, and if it's too yellow, you add in blue, but I actually kind of like it in the middle, maybe with a little extra yellow in it. And then tint. You don't have to use that slider that much. It's usually if there's some kind of problem with the image, and if it's too green, you add in magenta, and if it's too magenta, you add in green. Vibrance works overall, same with saturation. It's kind of on the intensity, but I'm going to show you a better way to do it with just individual colors. So say I can make everything much more intense, or I can gray it out, or like kind of half just desaturate it a little bit overall. But again, I prefer to have much more control and do it per color. So again, when I'm working with colors, I have all those sliders, but I also have my color mix. So with my color mix, I can choose, I can say, oh, I have a lot of green in this image. I want to change the HSL, the hue, saturation, and luminance of the green. So right now I kind of like yellowish green, but I can grab all that green and make it more bluish. Or I could say, no, I want it to be more yellowish. So see how I am only affecting the greens right now. Or I could bring up the saturation of the green. So the tractor wasn't affected, the goose wasn't affected. Or I can bring it down and now it's desaturated. So like if I wanted other things to pop out more, I might want the green to kind of recede back and be desaturated. And luminance is the overall lightness and darkness of that color. So I could have very light, or I could make all those greens darker. So I have that choice as well. And same with the truck. So again, I can have this be a more orangey truck or a more reddish truck, more kind of purpley red truck. I can have that red very intense if I want it to pop, or I could desaturate it if I want it to recede kind of in the background. And same with luminance, I can lighten up that truck or tractor, and I can darken that tractor. So you're just gonna slide these around until they look the way you want them to look. And you could just go through and affect the colors that you wanna affect. One other thing that's particularly helpful is in effects. We have a bunch of different things you can play around with, but vignette, when you bring it down, it makes the edges darker. When you bring it up, it makes the edges lighter. I like sometimes to add in a little vignette because then it can make whatever kind of is the center pop forward visually. And once you have a vignette, I'm going to overdo it a little bit so you see it better, I have my midpoint. So that's kind of how big that circle is. So I can bring it down. So the midpoint of that circle is much smaller or the midpoint is much bigger. I have roundness. So if it's more oval or more round or more square. And then I have feather. So feather means how soft the edge is of the vignette. So here there's a very hard edge because I brought it down, or I can bring it up and it's a very soft edge. The nice thing is when you click on your picture with your thumb, it shows you what the original was like. So you can see the difference. One last thing is when you're done editing, you need to put it back on your camera roll. So up at the top, so 3 in from the right, there's kind of a box with an arrow, and you can just say save copy to device. And once it's back on your device, it's in your camera roll, then you can upload it to social media or email it to someone or put it in Google Classroom or some other way that you turn in your photos if you're in a photo class. So that is the new early access way of doing it. Again, it has like a simplified toolbar and some other things. So if you have any questions, please let me know.